Well, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has arrived in Nairobi as part of his Africa tour. In Kenya, the Secretary of State is set to discuss several security concerns. They include the recent military takeover in Sudan, as well as the widening war in Ethiopia. He has already met with civil society representatives. Their conversation centered on the country's upcoming 2022 national election. He will then head to Nigeria on Thursday before ending his tour in Senegal. Well, now joined by our very own CGTN's Daniel Arap Moy, and he is joined by Professor John Stremlau, an international relations expert. He teaches at South Africa's University of Witswatersrand. Well, Daniel, let's start with you here. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken arriving in Kenya last evening as part of his state visit to Africa. What tops his agenda when he speaks with the president here?
Well, Anna, thank you very much. Yes, the U.S. Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, is right here in the Kenyan capital, Nairobi, where we are speaking from. Now, this is a very key visit by the U.S. Secretary of State. And one thing that we know is that Kenya is a key ally to the United States. And this visit, highlights some of will highlight some of the key issues that the two leaders will try to iron out. But of course, one thing that is common among all the three countries that the Secretary of State will be visiting, Kenya, Nigeria, Senegal, is the question of security, the question of insecurity within the East African region, the question of insecurity within the Sahel region. And when we talk of insecurity, it's not only conflict that we are looking at here. We're also talking of a climate change. We are talking about the question of COVID-19 that has ravaged many parts of Africa. So we expect the leaders to discuss these issues. Now, when it comes to the question of insecurity within the East African region, within the Sahel, we do expect that the leaders will try to come up with a viable solution to try to resolve the conflicts, especially what we see happening in neighboring Ethiopia. The leaders will try to, iron out these issues and see how they can join hands together as leaders to see that the conflict between the two parties in Ethiopia, is amicably resolved. But of course, we also know that recently President Uhuru Kenyatta was in Addis Ababa, where he held, talks with Prime Minister Abiy. And this is, of course, concerning what is happening in Tigray. And we do expect that during this afternoon presser, they will be able to issue a communique of what the leaders have agreed and how the United States is going to help try to resolve the crisis that we see happening in Ethiopia, the crisis that is happening in the Sahel. But of course, most importantly, we are seeing the increasing threat within the East African region. Yesterday, for example, the two bombs that went off in the Ugandan capital, Kampala, these are key areas of concern to the United States. It's a key area of concern to Kenya as a neighbor to Uganda. It's a key concern to Africa as a continent. So we do expect that the leaders will try to see how terrorism can be fought, because this is a complex issue that not just one leader can be able to iron out. Not the United States alone. It needs the neighbors' support. It needs Kenya's support. It needs other African support, including the African Union as well.
Professor, let's bring it to you in South Africa. How important is Blinken's visit, and especially the timing that he's decided to come and visit the continent and those three countries in particular?
Well, there are a number of issues that are on the agenda that make this a very timely visit. And I'm not sure what your previous panelists said on the security front, but I don't want to lose sight of the fact this is coming right after Glasgow and the climate change concerns that are very widespread throughout Africa, and for which the Chinese and the Americans did issue a joint statement. And I hope we'll get back into sync with regard to the Green Climate Fund and other means for alleviating climate change effects. There's also the COVID pandemic, which will be high on the agenda in Senegal. And so in addition to the obvious security concerns in Nigeria, and of course, which is in a terrible mess, and Kenya, with Ethiopia imploding, as Secretary Blinken said recently, and warned, and the Sudan coup. So he's got a very full agenda, but I hope they don't lose sight of the climate change and the broader U.S.-China relationship.
Let's come back to you, Daniel. Just speak to us about Kenya's role in U.S. Secretary of State Blinken's tour on the African continent. You touched a little bit just about Kenya, having gone and visited Ethiopia with the situation that's going on there. But just talk to us on a broader level, not just about one country, but the whole East Africa region.
Yes, Anna, indeed. One key thing that we must understand here is that Kenya is a very important key ally of the United States. And Kenya is also a member of the United Nations Security Council, a body that is tasked with maintaining peace and security across the world. Now, Kenya being part of that has the responsibility to ensure that there is peace and security across Africa, not just in Kenya, but across the entire continent. And of course, one of the areas is that Kenya is trying to work with the United States, to help broker peace between different warring parties. For example, through the help of IGAD, through the help of the East African Community, and of course through the African Union, the body that is in charge here in our very own continent. So the role that Kenya plays is very vital. And as you also aware, the United States is very much, particular when it comes to her foreign policy. And African countries that are allies to the United States should be seen as having peace and security. So the role of Kenya as a member of the United Nations Security Council plays a pivotal role, in foreseeing this and helping the international community to ensure that there is peace and security reigning on the African continent. So this visit will actually highlight that. And we have already seen Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta has been on the forefront to ensure that peace is restored in Africa, the Horn of Africa, and indeed the entire continent as a whole.
Professor Stremlau, just speak to us about what you believe Blinken's message is going to be to Africa when during his visit, and also what kind of relations does China have with the U.S., especially after that virtual meeting of their leaders yesterday?
Well, I see both the Glasgow understanding and the conversation they had for 3.5 hours yesterday virtually as both encouraging. I mean, both China and the United States have their real differences, and particularly in the South China Sea. But in regard to Africa, I think there's a possibility of a win-win-win from practical standpoint that would benefit Africa, that if Africa's given the agency to set its own agenda, there's plenty that they can do. And it's important, I think, to note that Secretary Blinken will be going to Senegal. Senegal is hosting the 8th Ministerial FOCAC, or Forum for China-Africa Cooperation, at the end of this month, November 29-30. And why not reassure the Senegalese who are hosting that this is a ministerial, not a summit. It's a chance for some practical discussions about how African agency could moderate the U.S.-China competition in Africa to Africa's advantage. And China now is a huge player in Africa, $192 billion of trade in 2019, and the foreign investment from China has gone up to $2.7 billion from a really small proportion of the U.S. Now it's over 55% of equal to the U.S. investment in Africa. There's a lot that they can talk about in a very practical, concrete, and positive way. And I think this could be a confidence building in the larger U.S.-China relationship and would be beneficial to Africa.
Thank you so much for all that, Professor Stremlau, and also our very honored CGTN's Daniel Arap Moy speaking to us on a crucial visit from the U.S. Secretary of State to those 3 African countries.